So today we're talking about organization, and so I just thought we'd get started real quick. My name is Lori Smith, and I am a tutor at SKU Academy. I currently tutor math, which doesn't have much to do with organization. I strive to be an organized person, which doesn't really mean much. In researching for this webinar, I did go visit the bookstore to look at books on organization because I thought, well, surely the bookstore will have tons of information on organization and living more organized and keeping everything into order and bringing order into our chaotic lives. And as it turns out, the bookstore, ironically enough, keeps all of their books on organization in the section under hobbies, dispersed in amongst the woodworking and the cooking and the arts and crafts and sewing section. So I literally spent an hour sitting on the floor at the bookstore excuse me, looking for the books on how to order my life. So I thought, well, maybe the bookstore should read some of these books because this was not orderly. In fact, the bookstore lady actually referred to that section as the junk pile of the bookstore. So I thought, well, maybe these books aren't the ones I should be reading. But anyway, so I did get some information from those books, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we go. So welcome. I'm glad you're here, and let's get started. And anytime you have something you want to bring up or you think of, feel free to just put it in the chat box, and you can unmute yourself maybe, or I can unmute you, and you can ask questions. All right, so as usual, we always start with a scripture, but usually I only give you an excerpt of a scripture. This is actually the longest excerpt I think we've ever seen, which is from 1 Corinthians. All things must be done properly and in an orderly manner. This is actually Paul writing to the Corinthians about how to come together as a group and how to basically do crowd control. He's just saying, hey, you know what? Do it orderly. Don't do it chaotic. Don't make things chaotic, more chaotic than they need to be. Be orderly. He also says in this chapter, God is not a God of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints. So God is a God of order. And so that's what we kind of grab onto. But that also tells us that as creation, we are not God, we are fallen. And that actually means that we're going to tend towards chaos. And you get your law of thermodynamics, which states that all things go from a state of order to disorder. So we can see that in our own lives, how our children's rooms will go from beautiful and cleaned up, especially the day they were born. You had it all perfect. And now it's just a continual state of chaos until they move out and you can cleanse the whole room with bleach and clean it all up. This is Paul reminding us just, you know what, God is a God of order and we need to bring order into this chaos. And that's actually a witness to the people around us that we can be orderly. That does not mean that we want to idolize being orderly, that we take the saying cleanliness is next to godliness so strictly that we come across as legalistic and overbearing, but that we do bring order into the chaos in our lives, and that in itself acts as a witness. So is Paul talking about running the church services, meetings, anytime Christians come together, and ironically, as a family, you are Christians coming together. So I kind of look at this and go, this applies to us, especially if you're a mother and you have lots of children. This totally applies to you. And we get together often as families, and moms are often the ones in charge of those meetings, you know, the crowd control, so to speak. So today in our webinar, we're going to be talking about 3 questions. We're going to talk about what is organization, what is the organized life, and how do we stay organized? So we basically kind of start with the idea of just defining what organization is, then kind of digging into that definition a little bit more, like, okay, organization is a sorted junk drawer, so to speak. It's order in a chaotic life, but how do we bring in that order? And then the third question, how do we stay organized? How do we encourage each other to stay organized? And of course, any tips you have is absolutely invaluable to all of us who are just struggling to bring order into our lives amidst all of the stuff. So what is organization? Something I learned in the bookstore specifically. Organization is actually mental and it's physical. So in that junk drawer book pile in the corner of the bookstore, all of those books were about physical organization, about taking all of your stuff, your clothing, your Tupperware drawers, all of your stuff, and putting them into some sort of order so that you could find everything. And then there's also the mental, and ironically, that section of organizing is not in that junk drawer. It's actually in more the self-help book section or the business book section. It's a mental thing. You are physically organized if you live by the mantra, everything in its place, in a place for everything. That's something I try to teach my children, by not very good. And you're mentally organized if you're clear on goals, direction, and scheduling. So if you're looking at this and thinking, oh, organization is just keeping my desk cleaned off, then yeah, that's true, but that's only a part of organization. The other part is mental. It's what are your goals for 2019? What's the direction that God has you going? How are you scheduling things so that you don't double book yourself? For example, today our webinar started at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, which is 4 o'clock Central Time. And it also happens to be, for us, the only day of the year we could go to the aquarium. So guess who was getting her kids up at 6 o'clock this morning to go to the aquarium so that we could get back in time to talk to you lovely people about organization, all the while thinking, maybe I didn't schedule this correctly. Maybe I should have tweaked this when I could have and changed it. But actually it worked out great because God blessed it. So that was really good. And in a sense, that is somewhat of an organization. I probably could have done that a little better, that scheduling part. But I'm not stressed about it, and that's good. That's really the goal. So there's that part of organization. It's both mental and it's physical. According to the dictionary, organization is the art of giving structure and character to something. So when we bring structure and character into something, we are organizing it. Basically, it's any time that an intelligent being enters into something that is not by nature intelligent. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but if you think about something in front of you, like a piece of paper or a room, like we talked about our kids going from a state of order to disorder in the thermodynamics. Organization is basically us coming in and saying, okay, we can make this better by applying our minds to it and adding some structure and some character and putting it all together. We can order it, okay? So that's more the mental aspect of organization, is when we think about how to order things in our lives and in our minds and in our hearts. The antonym to organization is actually destroy, which I find that is really kind of convicting, because when I'm not being really organized, what I'm doing is I'm giving way to destruction and to destroying things. And it's kind of how do I say this? It's kind of convicting in the sense that that's another name for the devil, is that he destroys things, that he's the prince of destruction. That's what he does, right? So what am I trying to say about that? Just to kind of point out to you that we don't idolize organization, but at the same time, we need to acknowledge that to sit back and not do anything about giving structure and order to the world that God has placed us in control of is really irresponsible, and it's not what he calls us to do. So we really want to look at this and go, how do we bring order to the chaos around us? Because that's what organizing is. So defining organization can be really difficult, but I thought this definition this was from dictionary.com, was really applicable. It's just giving structure to the things around us. It's an art. That's why it says structure and character. It manifests itself differently in every person. It's very personal, okay? As a teenager, I was not what you would consider organized, but I knew where everything was. Now, most people would say I am organized, but I don't feel organized. I actually think I'm less organized now than I was then. That's just my perspective, my perception. Clearly, I can't talk today. I'm so sorry. Hopefully, you're following me okay. So, organization, the art of giving structure and character to something. So we all know what it looks like. Do we all know what it is? God is God of order. If that doesn't convince you, the antonym should, as the antonym is another name for the devil. We can see how organization is something that we should be striving for. So let's talk about what the actual organized life might look like. Ironically, if you talk to anybody who considers themselves to be an organized person, they're going to tell you they're really not that organized. The most organized people in the world actually don't see themselves as being organized. And that's because they see all of their faults. We don't see them, but they see them, right? It isn't perfect. An organized life is one that is orderly, but it isn't perfect. So a myth with organized people is that organized people are never late, they never forget things, they have spotless houses and perfect children. And we all know in our mind that's not true, because clearly they're not going to have perfect children, and clearly their houses are not always spotless. But at the same time, we do sometimes look at them and think, boy, they're so perfect, but they're not. They are sometimes late. They do forget things. They do have not spotless houses, believe me, I know. And they have normal children just like everybody else. All right, sinful little creatures that run around their house and wreak chaos everywhere they go. Okay, the difference is that an organized person is not defined by the chaos around them. They are defined by their identity in Christ, which in itself is orderly. They are not defined by that chaos. They struggle to see the parts of their lives where there is chaos, but then they work out of that chaos and focus on God. The boots on the ground actions are the habits that we want to build to develop an organized life, right? So we look at this and we go, okay, yeah, that's what that is, but how do I live a better, more organized life in my own chaos? And that's where, we start looking at the application and go, well, how do we do this? Okay. So first, it's mental. We talked about organization. It's mental and it's a physical thing, right? So mentally, what is our brain telling us that's ungodly? What is our brain telling us that's a lie? Okay, I have a son that suffers with lies. He is convinced that he is stupid and can't do anything right. And every single time that comes up, this crippling behavior in his life comes up, we have to stop and we have to reaffirm ourselves and say, no, what does God say? What is the truth? What is the truth? What is your brain telling you that is not true, that is ungodly? What lies are being told to you? What lies are we believing? So we need to look at that and say, okay, well, my character is that I am just a messy person. Okay, yeah, so your organized life might look different than my organized life, but a messy person that's an excuse coming from a lie. That's not true. God has called you out of chaos. So messy person and chaos are two different things. And organized can look messy to some people, but it's not chaos. So we need to fill ourselves with the truth and put on the belt of truth and read the scripture and like we read at the beginning about God being not a God of confusion and not a God of disorder, how he's a God of order. So, think about it. What lies are you believing about leading an organized life? Are you believing that an organized person is never late and never forgets things and has a spotless house? And then you look at that and go, I could never have that. I'm always late, or I'm often late, and feel like I'm always forgetting things. Well, that's because that's a lie. Organized people are not never late, and they don't never forget anything. Okay, that's not true. Don't idolize them. Let's not make an idol of the organized life. Truth is that organized people, instead of being never late and never forget anything, actually what they do is they set up systems to make being on time, not forgetting things, and cleaning their houses manageable. So they don't just never do it. It's not some magical thing that happens. What they do is they put systems into place that help them to not be late often, or to try to remember things. Like, it's not that we don't ever forget things. Like, I think of, okay, I am somewhat of an organized person, even if you can't believe me as I ramble on, right, in this webinar about organized people. I forget things all the time. The difference is I write everything down in a little book, and then it helps me not to forget things. Like, tomorrow is my sister-in-law's birthday. And on Sunday, my husband said to me, oh, isn't her birthday this week? And I said, I don't know, is it? I need to send her a card. And then I opened my book and I said, oh yeah, it is. I totally forgot that it was her birthday this week, but thankfully I had written it down. And so we have these tools to help us so that we don't forget things. Okay, it's not that I remembered it, it's that I just forgot it often. I forget often. But that doesn't define me. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm such a forgetful person and I'm not organized. It's like, no, okay, I get it. I live in a fallen world and there's chaos all around me, and I'm battling it as best I can, and I'm persevering. And that's the difference. I persevere in our walk with Christ. We persevere. All right, let's see. Next slide, if I can get there. I'm not very good at this. Here we go. Oh, what lies are you believing? We just talked about that. What are you believing? Okay, I was going to fill this slide with all kinds of things that people tend to believe about the organized life, and I thought, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give you any ideas. The fact is, we don't overcome lies by thinking about what they are. We overcome lies by thinking about the truth. So I thought, well, I'll fill my triangle with the truth instead. You are a new creation, and you are not of this world, and with God, all things are possible. And to seek first the kingdom of God. That's way more important. If you're late for coffee with a friend because you stopped to feed a homeless man on the street, then great. That is what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. So we need to seek Christ and let the chaos around us fall away. God is a God of order, and He is perfecting you into the image of His Son, right? He calls you to be a new creation. He's called you out of that chaos. It's not your strength. If I've learned anything, everything that we're able to do as Christians is not because we're strong, it's because Christ is strong. In fact, He often tells us to do things that are in our weakness just so that we can declare how amazing He is to everybody around us, right? It's also why a lot of the most organized people in the world are actually not naturally organized. It's because God has taken a hold of them, and it's in His strength that they're able to even look somewhat organized and have some order in their life. All right, so how do we stay organized? Let's get down to the actual application. So I thought about, how do we stay organized? Okay, the mental is the lies, and we need to get over those lies and battle it with the truth and remind ourselves of why we're even trying to do this. What does this have to do with homeschooling? What does it have to do with parenting? It's because of the God of order that we go back to wanting to live a life of order out of the chaos that we have. How do we do that? What does that actually look like in our homes? You know, Jesus doesn't preach any sermons about how to handle your bills and your magazines and taking care of your dishes. He just doesn't. I mean, He doesn't tell you, oh, this is the proper way to do dishes. He doesn't have that, right? And it's because in the grand scheme of things, how you take care of your dishes isn't really as important as the fact that you keep them clean so they're ready to feed somebody who comes to your table, right? Your mind has had enough to deal with without having to remember that great idea you had for the next family gathering. So let's think about, how do we actually stay organized? We don't need to overwhelm our heads. Holding everything in our heads can be really overwhelming. I used to do that all the time. And then I thought I'd fix it. So I used to keep everything in my head. And then I thought, I can't keep everything in my head anymore. I've got so many things. So then I started doing this thing where I bought note cards. You can buy them in August. They're wicked cheap. They're like 25 cents, or they might be 50 cents now, for an entire pack of 3x5 note cards. And I am not kidding you. I had them in every room in the house. Everybody who knew me knew I had these. And they were in every room in the house, and you could just grab one when you had a great idea, and you could write on them. And then it was like I could get it out of my head and put it on a piece of paper. It was perfect until I needed to find that idea again. And then I was shuffling through decks of note cards. I was like, where did I put that note card? Where is that? Is that in the schoolroom? Is it in the library? Where is this note card that I'm looking for? I still have note cards. I use them for grocery lists and things, but I don't do that anymore because it was actually creating more chaos in my life. Although my head was clear, the ideas weren't in my head anymore, which was great. All right, so we have two categories for creating organizational structure. We have the tangibles and we have the mental. That is, the tangibles are the items that you hold on to, the clutter, the things that take up your space, physical space, and then you have the mental, right? We talked about organization, how it's a mental and it's a physical thing. So it's a mental thing in the sense of, how do you get yourself into a mental place where you can be organized? And then it's also a physical thing into how do you actually organize things, both organizing your physical, tangible items and organizing all the stuff that comes in on in the mental side. And then there's things that kind of overlap in both categories. This is a beautiful Venn diagram that you should be able to see on your screen. Tangibles are the things that we can hold, put your hand on, see. They act as their own reminders, right? There's nothing that reminds you more that you need to pay the bills like a stack of mail sitting on the dining room table. right? But it also creates incredible amount of chaos and clutter, and it in itself, it's actually creates a lot of stress. Some tangibles, we have bills, magazines, papers, dishes, towels, toys, tools. You can see it all right in the list there. It's everything from the stuff that comes into your house every day, all afresh, like papers from school, to things that stay in your house all the time, like the kitchen dishes and the skillet that you use to make dinner with. Those are your tangibles. A lot of these are usually sorted already. Chances are you have your dishes in a cabinet as we speak. They are put away, they are ordered in there, stacked somehow, right? But do you know exactly where your favorite platter is? Do you know where all of your little Tupperware pieces are? Because I sure don't, especially now. Um, so this is where that old saying that my grandmother used to say, everything in its place and a place for everything comes in, right? Every time we have something in our house, we have to say to ourselves, where does this belong? And if it doesn't have a place, let me find a place for it and create a space for it. If it's important, I will create a space for it. If it is not important, I will not create a space for it and I will get rid of it because it's causing chaos in my house, right? When teaching my boys how to clean their rooms, I would spend 30 minutes helping them, usually only once a season because I hate helping kids clean their rooms. And I pick up things and I'd ask, where does this go? Where does this go? Where does this belong? And if the answer was, I don't know, I would ask, how can we create a space for it so that we know where it is the next time we want it? And then we'd create a space for it and we'd put it back. And then it would have a space. And then it would be, well, why didn't you put it back where it went? Or why didn't you put it back where it belonged? Does it work? Yeah, usually it worked. Did it help my boys keep their room more clean? No, absolutely not. They're boys. Have you met them? Does it help them know how to clean their room? Yes, because I'm modeling to them how to put things away and how to create order in the chaos. So slowly they're building the habits of keeping their stuff organized. So that's the habit. So the first tool for organizing your tangibles is to create a space for things that are important and eliminate any of those tangible items that aren't worthy of space. They're just not worthy of space. So you might get magazines in the mail. Is it worthy of the space in your house? Great. Keep it, put it somewhere. If it isn't, get rid of it right away. Don't save it, right? I recently read a book by, her nickname is The Nester, and the book was turned from her blog. She wrote a blog and then it turned it into a book, which made it read really fast and was really enjoyable to read. But I generally try to avoid books that were written from people who write blogs because I could just read the blog, right? But it was really interesting and really helpful. And she was talking about decorating your house. And she said something that I thought was really profound. She asked, do you have a gym bag by the back door? Or do you have a stack of magazines in the living room? And then she said, if you do, then you are decorating your house with gym bags and magazines. And I thought, I've never met anyone who says to me, oh, I can't wait to decorate my house with gym bags and magazines. Like that's just the picture of the perfectly decorated house to me. It's absolutely not, right? So then we ask ourselves, well, why do we put those in the middle of the room then? Or why do we stick them on the floor next to the table or next to the door? Why are we putting them there? I don't like decorating with gym bags and magazines, and I'm not even a decorator. Like my house is very bare as far as decorating goes. But my gym bag does go in the closet because I don't want to look at it all the time. And my magazines go inside a box in the living room because I don't want to see them when I'm not reading them, right? So you need to decide what works for you. If you don't see your magazines, will you forget to read them? Then maybe you should have your magazines on a table, right? A coffee table in the living room, that sort of thing. Do you still read your magazines even if you can't see them? Then you probably don't need them on a table, right? How about your bills? Where do you pay your bills? Figure out where you pay your bills and then put your bills there, right? So a lot of these tangibles, you just look at it and go, where do I need to use this item? And where can I store it so that it's not in my way, so that it's orderly and it has a place. And when I find it on the floor, I can hand it to my child and say, hey, go put this away. It belongs in the closet on the third row up on the left-hand side. And they can go there and go, oh yeah, look, there's more of them, right? It's important that you will make a space that works for you. So as helpful as I want this webinar to be, I also realize it's really personal. This is why most people hire somebody to come in and help them organize their stuff, their tangibles, because their house is so personal to themselves that Everybody stores things differently. I keep my bills in a drawer by my computer because that's where I pay my bills. But you might do what my mom does, which was kept her bills in a box in the kitchen by the stamps and the envelopes because that's where she paid her bills, right? I keep my dishes in the kitchen, but you might keep your dishes in the dining room because you always set a table for dinner and you need your dishes in the dining room. Whereas I serve our dishes right from the kitchen, so I need my dishes in the kitchen, right? That sort of thing. So what works for you? What does your life look like? If you come across something that you can't find a space for it, and you start to ask yourself, why do I even have this? Then it's not worth it. Just throw it away or give it away to somebody else who wants it. Once you make a space, then you have to put the item in that space. But if you don't have a space for it and you don't use it enough, then just don't keep it. It's just creating chaos in your life. All right, second tool for organizing tangibles. So the first tool for organizing our tangibles was to create a space for things that were important and to eliminate any tangible that isn't worthy of space. The second tool for organizing tangibles is actually the everyday thing, which is to simply put things in the space that you created for them when you aren't using them, right? Model and teach the people you live with how to put those things back when they're done. We do this with tables in my house. I hate stuff on the tables. I have taught, I have nagged, I have begged, whatever you want to call it, my children to put their stuff, take their stuff with them. The expectation is that we will leave the room ready for the next person to enjoy. To leave it in any other state is to communicate to others, you aren't important enough for me to leave you a clean space to work. In fact, you are my slave and must first pick up my mess before you can enjoy the table. And I teach my kids, these things ought not to be. We are living together. We need to be thinking about the other people we're living with, and we need to be leaving the table ready for the next person to use it without having to pick up our junk. We don't want to leave our stuff behind. We aren't perfect, and sometimes we leave in a mess, and we leave in a hurry, and stuff is in a mess. And then the person who comes into the room next has the ability to bless their sibling or their mother or their father or whoever did it by picking up that mess, right? But what our goal is to leave the space, the room, at what I call ground zero, which is ready for someone else to use, like a clean slate. Everything's put away. The blanket is on the couch, ready to be used. Notice I said on the couch. We have a chest for blankets, and if blankets drive you nuts, maybe the place you decide to put blankets is inside a chest so you can't see them. I keep one blanket on the couch ready to use. That's my choice. That fits for my life, right? We just talked about that. But that being said, if my children leave the living room and they leave 3 blankets on the couch, that's not ground zero. And if they leave 0 blankets on the couch, that's not ground zero. We leave 1 blanket on the couch so that the next person can be warm but not be cluttered by blankets when they sit down. The end table must be empty, so it's ready for your cup of tea. The blanket is ready for you to be used. The floor is ready for you to stroll across it without being legortured. That's Smith family term for Lego torture. Stepping on a Lego is very painful. So it's ready for you. That's because as a person who lives with you, I care for you and I want to make sure that the room is ready for you, right? It takes a whole 30 seconds to put your stuff away when you're done. So teaching our families to do that is really important, and it takes way more than 30 seconds to teach your children to do that, right? It takes 5 minutes every night to put the house back to ground zero if you've built up those habits. But these are habits, and that's the second, what was I calling them, tool? The second tool is to build the habit of putting things back in the places when you're done. These are habits, and it takes time to build habits and acquire habits. The habit of putting things away when you're not using them. They take time to develop. Okay, so we've talked about tangibles. First, find a place to put all of your tangibles. Find a place to store everything. Where do you keep the sports equipment? Where do you keep the tools? Second, build the habit of putting everything back where it goes when you're done. Let's talk about non-tangibles. Everybody and their mother has an idea of how to organize non-tangibles. A non-tangible is the mental stuff, your events, your appointments, your goals, your project ideas, topics to discuss with your children, right? We want to mentor our children, and so A lot of times we want to ask the questions of our children, things like, hey, what are you reading in the Bible these days? Or what has God been teaching you about your relationship with your brother? And we don't want to forget, oh, this child is struggling with this particular thing. I want to make sure I talk to him about that. That's a mental thing. You can hold it in your head if you want to. I've learned that my head is the worst place to hold stuff because it's not always reliable these days, and because it's prime real estate. I mean, I've got 1,001 things going through my head at every time, and if I keep trying to store everything in there, I'm going to drop stuff. It's going to get lost, so I write it down. Okay. I try not to hold everything into my head as much as I can. I hold some stuff, like hopefully this webinar, right? But not a lot. So how do you organize those? There are planners online that you can buy. You could do note cards like I did for years. You can sort things into a notebook. I do a bullet journal. So if you're looking for if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to learn a great planner tool at this webinar today, you're really not. Because planners are so personal, it's the same idea as somebody coming into your house to teach you how to organize your tangibles. If you like how pretty planners are, then go find you a planner that works really great. There are a couple of really great ones out there. If you're very to the point like I am, I bullet journal, and it has been so helpful to me because it's so simple. And you can just go ahead onto YouTube and you can search for bullet journaling, and there's videos on just how to get started. It's super simple. You can just choose a plain notebook to keep track of all of your events and your appointments and your goals and discussion topics and all kinds of things. About the stuff in the middle here, tangibles and mental, the stuff that kind of is in the middle, your to-do list, your house cleaning, your meal plans, reading lists. These are mental because you can't really hold on to them, but at the same time, they're tangible because they're in your face. Like if you don't clean your house, it becomes very evident that you did not clean your house. If you don't make dinner, it's very evident really quickly that you didn't cook dinner tonight, right? This is the dinner hour right now. Like, oh, what are we having for dinner tonight? It started as a mental thing and then it works its way into the tangible category. So how does it make that transition? I used to write down daily chores on a grid for my children. And my children each still get a grid. It looks very similar to our student planner that you can get for free by registering. It looks exactly like that, with the exception of mine's color-coded because I have multiple children. And they open up their grid and they can see what they have to do for school and they can see what they have to do for cleaning, house cleaning. And so each day has like a theme. But because we've been running this house cleaning theme thing for like 7 years, I don't have to write down the house cleaning anymore. It's so ingrained and memorized into our structure, into our pattern of the day that everybody knows, oh, it's Monday, so that means we're going to do the bathroom, and we're going to clean the windows in the kitchen, and we're going to take out the trash, and we're going to do some laundry. Like they all know what their responsibilities are and what kind of the theme is for Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and so on and so forth. And each person in my house has their own things that they have to do, but they have the grid there to remind them just in case. It's their responsibility though. That's how we do chores in our house. You can use a planner, you can do your own grid, you can use our student planner, which is very simple. It's based on the same idea as the bullet journal. But I try to create as little paper as necessary for those items just because it oftentimes becomes more clutter. So if anybody has any particular concerns or there's something particular about that, feel free to just put in the chat box and I'd love to talk about it more. But I mean, that's just kind of an example of what we do. Events and appointments, I put those right in my bullet journal. A lot of people put them on a calendar on the fridge that's shared, and a lot of people color coordinate them. That's what my mom used to do. My grandmother used to put the weather on the calendar, which was really fun because then we'd look at previous year's weather and we could compare this same day. Last year was this temperature and the year before it was this temperature, and it was really fun, but I don't know if it actually had any benefit to our life other than it was just neat to look at. Nowadays, we all have calendars on our smartphones, and you can share calendars on your smartphone, which is really helpful if you have a large family and you're trying to keep track of events and appointments then it's really easy to just share your calendar. I don't even bother, you know, when you go to the doctor's office and you make a doctor's appointment and they give you that little card, I don't even bother with that. As they're making the appointment, I put it in my phone and I share it with my husband and with anybody else who needs to see it, and it's there. It's done. I don't need the card. I don't need to take home that paper. I just throw it right away at the doctor's office. I tell them not to make out the card anymore because I've got it in my phone. It's done. Many people still carry planners for to-do lists. I put those in my bullet journal. Other people use note cards. They use their own planners. You can put your to-do list on your phone as well. There are apps for that. There's the reminder app on the Apple phone. I'm not sure what they have for Android. Contacts, there's the contact app. I mean, everything is digitized these days, and it's supposed to help you. And then here's the key. This is really the key. If the app on the phone is helping you to stay organized with the contacts app and the calendar app and the meal list app or the grocery list app, great. Use it. But if it's not, if it's just one more thing that you have to remember to do, like, oh, I've got to remember to write on the grocery list app that we need this item. Like right now, I have a note card in my kitchen, and every time we run out of something, I say, oh, someone needs to write that on the list. And when you use the last of it, you write it on the list. I had my 7-year-old writing milk on the list last week. He actually said, oh, where's the grocery list? I need to write milk on it. And he ran over and he spelled milk M-I-L-C, which I thought, well, that's not bad. He's only 7, right? That's okay. But the fact that he was 7 and he was thinking, oh, I used the last of the milk, I need to go write this on the list, that's huge. That's a habit that he's built, that he's got. We're not going to forget milk at the grocery store this week because he wrote it on there to make sure that we got it. If the app doesn't allow you to do that or it doesn't work, like I don't see him going, Mom, where's your phone? Can you unlock your phone for me so that I can type in the word milk on the app? That's not likely to happen for him. But if your kids are all older and they all have their own smartphones and you can sync your lists, then maybe that works for you. But if it doesn't work for you, don't use it. Don't use it just because it's new technology or it's promised to make your life better. If it doesn't actually make your life better, don't use it. Use what works for you. And sometimes you have to try stuff before you can tell if it works for you or not. Okay, organization and living the organized life is a combination of good systems in place that work for you, habits that help you stay diligent, and a mindset that keeps you focused on what's important. So I just thought these are some really quick last things to show you and to, if I can get my mouse to go over, here we go. I always have technology problems. You can't believe it. All right. 3 things to kind of leave you with today as we wrap up is don't get bogged down in the little things. Set your mind on things above. Like I mentioned at the beginning, if you're late for a coffee date because you stopped to feed a homeless man, that's setting your mind on things above. Like if your friend who you're meeting with coffee is mad at you for being 10 minutes late because of that, then you need a different friend. I mean, that might be harsh, but you need to remember what's most important. God sometimes sets up these appointments for us, and we need to make sure that we're thinking about, what am I communicating here? It is more important for me to be teaching my 7-year-old the importance of responsibility and putting milk on the list than it is for me to be getting my family in the 21st century and getting an app for our grocery list. It is, in my mind. It totally is, right? If getting the paper magazine gets my kids to read news, then I'm going to get the paper magazine. I realize everybody else is reading it on their phone. I only get one magazine. I'm getting the paper one because I want my kids to read it, right? So don't get bogged down in the little things. Think about the big picture. What are we trying to do with our children? What are we trying to do in our life? When people look at us and in our families, what do you want them to say about you? The second thing is develop good habits which work to prevent chaos. Think about the chaos in your life and go, okay, can we prevent habits, good habits, to be proactive to prevent some of this chaos? Okay. This is sort of like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's a lot easier to have a non-chaotic Sunday morning when you go into Sunday morning actually on Saturday night. When you make sure you go to bed at a decent hour on Saturday night, and you make sure that your laundry is all done before Sunday morning and you are ready to go, is a lot easier. And I remember people used to say that to me when I had little kids, like, oh, make sure you you set up their, I don't even know, I'm like, set up their stuff in the morning or lay out their clothes for Sunday morning, Saturday night. And I always thought, I don't have time to do that on Saturday night. Are you nuts? And I still don't have time to do that. But for me, what worked for me was just making sure that our laundry was clean. That way on Sunday morning, they could grab almost anything. At least it'd be clean and would be good to go. It's when you have your teenager Sunday morning who's like, oh, I have to wash my pants, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning and you have to leave in 30 minutes, and you're just thinking, that's not going to happen, dude. You should have thought this through. This is where we want to build those habits of, okay, make sure that you get those things done before. Let's try to prevent some of this chaos, right? And then create simple systems. Simple to set up, simple to follow. Simple, simple, simple. The KISS method, right? Keep it simple, stupid. If it is not simple, you will not do it. That's just the facts. I mean, our lives are chaotic enough. If you're setting up some elaborate system to keep your house clean, like you've got like every third Tuesday, we are going to deep clean the kitchen. And then on the fourth Tuesday of the month, we're going to deep clean the living room. Then we're going to work clockwise through the house so that every Wednesday we are washing the windows in each room. I mean, that would be, I couldn't follow it. Nobody could follow it, and you're not going to get it done. It's just not going to happen. So try to create simple systems that work for you, that work for your lifestyle. If you're gone to a co-op on Thursdays, then don't plan to clean your house on Thursday. It's just unrealistic. All right, and that's it. Those are our 3 things I want to leave you with. Does anybody have any questions or things that they want to add? I think you can unmute yourself. If not, you can always type it in the chat box and I can address it. But I just, as a reminder, we talked about organization today, about it's a mental and a physical thing. Mentally, what are you thinking is an organized life, and how do you combat the lies that are in there and actually focus on the truth that is, we are following a God of order and we work out of chaos. It's not that we're not surrounded by chaos. And then physically, what is the chaos around you? And then how do you dig through that? How do you order all the tangibles in your life, and how do you order the non-tangibles, and kind of create that vision that people see of your family when they see you, and develop those good habits. All right, it doesn't look like we have any real questions. I'm glad everybody could hear me today, and I hope this was helpful. I realize now I didn't put any of my contact info in the last screen, so I'm going to type it in the chat box. If anybody has any questions or thing they didn't agree with, or if you have, what I just realized is I've muted you. If you have any questions or comments or concerns or suggestions for things that we can be doing better at SKIO Academy to help you, because that's what we do. We kind of look at things and go, you know what, how can we help people better? That's our goal. That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to help parents and families educate their middle and high school students. And so we try to teach you some things that not only you as a parent can use, but you can use with your kids to help your kids with things. If you have anything, you can email me, Lori, L-O-R-I, at skioacademy.com. SKIO is S-C-I-O, Academy, A-C-A-D-E-M-Y.com. Just send me an email. Let me know if you have any suggestions or anything. I'd love to hear them.